Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Afghanistan by Afghans, where you get to meet some Afghans living all over the world in the diaspora. In this case, she lives, I learned, like 10 minutes away from me here in LA. So I'm very excited to have Meghan Kabir here with us today. She is a singer songwriter and a lot more than that, performer. So we'll learn more about her. So first and foremost, Meghan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, let's start where I always like to start with all my guests about the journey of being here. You know, we all own it to our parents and grandparents and the whole roots of where we are today. So what about yours? Where does your
Yeah.
family's journey begin?
So my family's journey really began when the Soviets invaded. My dad left in 1979. And like so many Afghans in the diaspora, I have family kind of spread out all over the world. I think that's something I always try to explain to my American friends. They're like, oh, it's so cool you have family in Paris or London. And I'm like, this is actually kind of sad that, everybody's been broken up into whatever country would take X amount of refugees and those seeking political asylum. And so that was very much the beginning of, where my parents began when my dad settled in the Bay Area in California. My mom is American and was always just really interested in different cultures. And um, ironically, we kind of found out years later, my grandfather on my dad's side, he was living in Kabul, but he was doing importing and exporting of goods. And he started a business in San Francisco. And when my mom was a teenager, she used to love going to the store because they had really cool exotic imported items. And then, like 5 years later, nobody could have imagined, but the war happened. My dad ends up in California. He's going to night school to try and learn English. And there he met my mom at the local college. And at that time, it was very taboo, to be honest. A lot of my cousins are starting to sort of integrate into, other cultures and marrying outside of Afghan culture. But at that time, it was very kind of unheard of. So they had a bit of like a rocky road to start with. But, once they got to know my mom and realized what a great person she was, they really welcomed her into the family. And that was kind of our beginnings here in America. I was born in North Carolina, which is super
Oh,
random. I lived there for like a year, but we mostly lived in California as a kid.
that's wonderful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, why North Carolina of all places?
Yeah. Well, so on my mom's side, my grandmother lived there. So it was really just to be close to family. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, growing up in a multicultural, multiracial sort of family must have been an experience, and it's a unique experience for Afghans because, as you mentioned, it wasn't. It's becoming more common, but it wasn't as common in the '80s or '70s or early '90s.
Yeah.
So do give us a little bit of insight into how was it growing up, between these two cultures. One, of course, very American and prominent in here, and then the other one very not as known probably around when you were growing up. Nobody probably knew
Yeah.
where Afghanistan was. So do give us a
No.
little, yeah, how was that
Yeah,
experience?
I mean, sadly, Afghanistan really was put on the map to the mainstream, with 9/11. So prior to that, most people couldn't locate it on a map. They had never even heard of what this like mystical place was. But I think that for me, it's something that has been a bit of a struggle because I've never been American enough or Afghan enough. It's like no matter what you do, your American friends look at you and think, oh, well, that's weird, or you do this thing differently, and vice versa. So I have always felt like a bit of a black sheep, but the older I get, the more I kind of embrace that. And with the music that I make, I really believe that's why people have really supported me and embraced what I'm doing, because I'm kind of like unapologetically myself. Whether you like it or you don't, like I hope there's something for everybody with it. But
Mhm.
it really, and I think that part of this hybrid of culture is very much who I am and everything I do and the art that I create, fashion, cooking, like every aspect, the way I decorate my home. And I've never wanted to be defined as one thing anyways. So I
Hmm.
love being able to pull the best of both worlds and kind of find this perfect little recipe that, is unique to myself. So,
Hmm.
it's definitely had its struggles, but I really think the more you embrace it and see it as an asset, the more things kind of flow a little more freely, if that makes sense.
Right, right, right. You mentioned interior design. I did notice those beautiful flowers and oranges
Oh,
behind
thank
you.
you.
And
This is kind of actually my temporary LA place. I
okay,
split time between Nashville and LA, so this is just for like the next 3 months. But thank you. I tried to make it
it,
as homey as possible.
it looks beautiful. I love it. I love it. I
Thank
didn't get
you.
to comment off camera, so here we have it on
Here
camera.
we are. I
Here.
wish I could say these are orange, but they're not. They're just regular old oranges.
Oranges, yes, yes. Um, the hybrid sort of upbringing has, of course, its upsides and downsides, and
Hmm.
both of them. But it's a unique experience on its own. Those of us who are kind of have hybrid upbringings because of migration, and in your case, it is migration related, but it's actually just intercultural marriage
Hmm.
in a way. Could you kind of give some highlights of some of the benefits of growing up in a multicultural family? We always
Yeah.
hear about, I don't fit in places, nobody
Hmm.
accepts me for who I am. But what are some benefits of actually coming from two different cultures?
I mean, I really think it's about openness and also realizing that we have a lot more in common than we do differences, like on a fundamental level. Like, okay, maybe the way we cook is like completely different spices. That's a very literal sense, but I just mean like sense of family and like that values and those are things that my mom as an American always really was important to her. And I think when she met my dad, that was why she was so drawn into his culture because he saw how family oriented Afghans are.
Hmm.
That's a huge thing. Hospitality, like that's a huge part of being Afghan. So I think that there are so many positive things to both cultures. I also think I think about my grandparents on my Afghan side. They came from, Afghanistan and I don't know how old they were, probably in their 50s.
Yeah.
So you're pretty set in your ways at that point. But the benefit that I've had from this mix is that my dad was young enough to know who he was as an Afghan, but also be open minded to experiencing other things. And that was where him and my mom, growing up, they both brought in this very like yin and yang kind of energy.
Hmm.
And like there would be times where my mom would say, no, 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 like let her go do this thing. She can wear the fingernail polish, as like a kid or so, whatever that thing was. And then he'd be like, okay, yeah, how bad is this thing? Like, is this actually bad or is this just something that I've been conditioned to think is bad? And vice versa. So I think that I really did kind of benefit from having both sides, but really just that I really think it's like about the open-mindedness, and but also not losing who you are at the same time.
Right. And the most important question from that comment is, what's your favorite color? You mentioned nail polishes. What was your favorite
Oh,
color?
favorite polish color. I'm very like boring right now. There's this one that's like Lincoln Park After Dark. It's like a
Okay.
deep purple. That's what
You're
I have on right
talking
now.
to a guy, so you have to give color, an actual color name.
Midnight purple.
Purple. Okay.
Purple.
Exactly. Purple. There you go. Hey, purple is not even a real color, right? It's like a mix of blue and another color. I
Oh,
don't know.
you know more than I do.
It's
I'll
not
take your
even,
word
it's
for
not,
it.
I don't know. I think so. See, that's how much I know about colors.
I
Um,
believe you.
but now getting to like your music and your sense of, your career choice and all of that, what were some of the early inspirations for you to want to go into music?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Bay Area and I, at a really young age, got involved in like acting and modeling. I did like a bunch of like runway shows as a kid in San Francisco. And then I kind of started doing like very small bit parts in films. My first movie was Angels in the Outfield, and it was like a teeny, teeny, tiny, you could blink and miss me kind of a part. And so I did a bunch of like commercials and things. So I was very used to kind of being seen. And then I got into dance. And so I was sort of always in that like entertainment space and was very like bubbly and outgoing as a kid. I guess some things never change, right?
No.
But so basically that was kind of where that kind of energy came from. And then my mom, on my mom's side of the family, I have an aunt that was a opera singer, and she was involved in like theater, and so she was always like encouraging me to sing. And both of my parents, my dad especially, are like huge music fans. So there was just
Yeah.
always music in the house. Ahmad Zaire, Ida Salim, like all of the greats were just constantly playing at like every family gathering. Like just there was always music in the house. So I
Okay.
think having that, and then like both of my parents are very creative people. Like my dad's really great with art, and actually so is my mom, and so many different mediums. So I think it was like a very colorful, mixed kind of home of music and art and
Mhm.
culture. And even in the Bay Area, my grandfather, my Afghan grandfather, I have to kind of keep clarifying so you can get the like scene here. But he had like this house in Union City, and that was kind of like the house that everybody, all the Afghans would always come to, and they would be packed parties, and like I would be falling asleep, next to the tabla, or and he always
Mm.
had Naeem Popal, Rahim Johnny, like all these really famous Afghan singers would come to our house. And I think I was sort of I think I was just exposed to it,
Oh,
and then I just
right, right.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you have it in your DNA with both your parents being artists, or
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
inclinations. Well, you mentioned your dad's art. What's your mom's art? What does she like to do?
She does like oil paintings, but she's
Okay.
really very like just creative in general. Like if you ever come to Nashville, come to our house. Like it's just pure expression. Like, and my parents live on like some land in Nashville, and so my mom will like be out in nature, like drying flowers and pressing them, and like
Hmm.
growing things that she like creates her own spice blends, and like she's
Hmm.
just very expressive. So.
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Namakara.
Yeah. You could apply arts in every aspect of life. It's just not
Yeah.
limited to performing arts, of course, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so at what time did you, I know you have written songs for other people too, some known names.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that journey of you writing songs that became hits and were on billboards and such. Tell us a little
Yeah.
about those.
Yeah. I mean, it really was something very unexpected, to be honest. I never really considered that being a career, actually. I always was just performing. But when I was like in high school, when I really decided I wanted to do music, I had met a producer in Nashville that was a really successful songwriter. And he said, if you want to have longevity, learn how to write music. And he was like, if you want to be a real artist and really truly have something to say, like learn how to write songs. So
Mm,
that tiny piece of advice really took, sculpted the way I moved forward at that point. Um, and I was signed to Warner Brothers in LA. I had a record deal. And while I was making my record, like so many artists, it was really frustrating because I was stuck on the label. They weren't putting anything out. There was like corporate restructuring, and I was stuck. And while I was waiting, I was like, I've got so many great songs now that I've accumulated, and they're just sitting, and I hate to see these sit. So I had sent the song to like head of Warner Pictures, and Warner Pictures loved it, and they attempted in for some films, kind of like kept finding all these homes that never quite came through,
mhm,
until Fox was doing a movie called Ramona and Beezus, starring Selena Gomez, and that she ended up recording the song. And I was like, oh wow, I could have like a whole career making music for other people. So that was my first cut,
mhm.
and really kind of just opened the possibility up of making music for other people.
That's wonderful. And how were you discovered by Warner Brothers and labels from Nashville?
It was honestly, it was many years of, anybody that knows me like knows I'm such a hustler. Like it was many years of just working my ass off and rinse and repeat. And like I didn't go to college. I graduated a year early from high school because I was very driven and just like knew what I wanted. And then growing up in Nashville, like I did all those things when you start out that you're like willing to do. It's like camp outside of like the venue because you know this person's going to be there, and like give them your CD, or whatever it was that you had back then. That was your calling card. So it was like years of just doing that and trying to be as great as I could be, with what I had been given, and just chasing down opportunities. And then eventually I, had met different people at labels and put a showcase on, and they had been kind of like tracking the work I was doing for a few years. And then
Mhm.
eventually it kind of all came together.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And now where you are, you kind of skipped over it. You were like, oh, and then you ended up at the label. I was like, okay, that journey itself is another hour interview because
I know.
it's
There's
not
so
an
many
easy.
stories.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
easy. That's never easy.
Overnight success does not exist.
Exists. Yeah. So I wanted to clarify that for those ones, because you did say it as
No.
if it was overnight. But now you started. Yes, you wrote for I guess a song that Gomez sang, and there was another one. Another popular singer also sang one of your other songs. Who was that? I can't think of it, but I know it's a
Yeah.
music.
So I did a single for Kelly Clarkson.
Right.
And that was like kind of, I mean, there's so many stories, so we can like get as in depth or not as in depth as you would like. But that one, it was towards the end of my contract with Warner Brothers, and I had written the song for myself. And again, impatient me, I was just like, this song is so great. Like, you guys don't get it. Like, they didn't get the song. And I was like, well, if you guys don't get it, then like, I'll find somebody else who does. And I sent it to an A&R at Sony, which was Kelly's label at the time. And I was like, check this song out. It was the end of summer. They had spent like months, right, doing all these songwriting camps, which are like little incubators for writers. And then they write all these songs for an artist in mind with a kind of a direction given. None
Hmm.
of the songs got picked up. And they decided they were going to just do like 2 or 3 new songs because they were doing a greatest hits album. So like hundreds of songs have, whatever, have been passed on. And I woke up in the middle of the night and was like, screw it, I'm sending this to them. So I sent it to them, and literally within 24 hours, she was on tour in Australia, and she was recording the song by the next day. And it
Hmm.
just all happened very quickly. And yeah, so that was a single for her.
That's how that came into being. And
Yeah.
now you're mentioning, one of the cool things you've been doing is performing and writing Afghan songs, mostly performing.
Mhm.
I saw one or two of old Afghan songs that you're rejuvenating, or I should say covering. I don't know what the right terminology for that would be, covering.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but tell us a little bit about what you're up to nowadays. What do you want to do?
Yeah, well, I think right now I am very much kind of in the songwriting space. So I'm working on several different records, mostly in LA right now. And then obviously I have such a huge passion for Afghanistan, especially in light of everything that's happened this past year. I've gotten very deeply involved in advocacy, fundraising, just kind of everything and anything and everything in between.
Mhm.
I've been doing a lot of performances. I just did the 2T Plus launch app launch. I'm not awake yet. It's a little too early for me. I'm on the
No worries.
musician hours. So I just did that last weekend. And, I think the more I kind of dabble in that, the more I just really enjoy it. And I'm kind of like wherever the opportunity or the want or need is, I kind of, I am a creative person. So it's like you
Right.
can make plans, but at the same time, so much of the work that I do has to be really fluid and kind of go where the love is.
Right.
But I do have plans to release some more 4C songs. I've only really officially done two, like in my career ever, but they've both gotten a lot of great response. And I think that for me, I'm on this personal mission of making sure that our art and culture stays alive.
Hmm.
And the work that I do with my American stuff is like amazing, and I feel very blessed and grateful to do it.
Hmm.
But I have a very deep connection to Afghanistan, and I just really hate to see anybody suffer or go through the things that are ongoing.
Hmm.
And so whatever I can do to try and help move our people forward
Right.
is what I want to do right now. So I am more inspired than ever, just on a musical level. Like, it may not keep people warm or feed people, but maybe it'll feed you spiritually and give people hope. And That was something I performed in New Jersey a couple months ago at one of the military joint bases, and getting to see firsthand these evacuees that have literally, like our families all over
Hmm.
again, have left everything behind, taken what they could carry. But to see them show up for these performances that we did, and the joy that it was like a spiritual experience. I went there fully like ready to just give of myself. And I feel
Hmm.
like I got so much in return because it was like the joy of just them being there and enjoying the music. And it really brought me back to that like childlike feeling of when I got into music, which is really this like thing that transcends language, race, gender, like all these things. Music is very powerful. And so to get to experience that, it just kind of reminded me like why I do this.
Hmm.
And I want to keep that at the forefront, especially in upcoming projects for Afghanistan and music that I make.
Right, right, right. I did not know that you did a performance at the camp. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So
Yeah.
you, among a few other Afghans, were invited to. I know they were trying to do art
Hmm.
stuff to kind of keep them entertained and also kind of connected. Is that was part of that?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was
How
with
did that happen?
Mushta.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's Gira. They are a nonprofit based in New Jersey, and they put on a benefit show. So Ustad Mangal and Moshta and myself, the three of us performed, and then we had like a few other things on the fundraiser night.
Okay,
But we did two performances at the joint bases. So
that's
yeah,
very
that was really, they kind of spearheaded that, and I was involved in the planning committee for it, and it was just really it did take some like coordinating, like we had like Homeland Security and like all this stuff, that there were many moving parts to like make it possible, but we were really grateful that we were able to do it. They had like 15 to 20,000 people on that base, so we had to do two performances because there were too many people to just have in one sitting.
right. Right.
So yeah, there was so much to say about all of these things, but that's it in a nutshell. I
And
have a
then
weird shadow on my face right now. I don't know if you can
I
tell. I
know.
keep going like
No, it's
this.
good. Yeah, I think that's good. It looks good, regardless.
Okay, I'm getting distracted.
No, 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 that's good. Yeah, the closer you are, that's good. The shadow, now
Okay,
you're now in your full light.
all right, great.
You're in great lighting condition.
Great.
Now, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about kind of the journey of course, every artist is so fluid and it goes everything. But what's your own heart's calling? What do you wish to be doing more of?
Ooh, great question. I mean, oh man, I kind of feel like I'm doing it, like I I have a good balance right now, like I feel like I'm working on meaningful American pop music projects that are things that I really feel passionate about because the message of what we're talking about feels important. And it feels like things that people need to hear right now, especially.
Hmm.
So that feels like a huge, thing to finally have my career in a place where I'm getting to work on things that will see the light of day, are great artists, they're talented, great message. The Afghanistan project, that's a huge other part of my mind and my world and my life. And I want to just continue to do that. I just closed out like a fundraiser that Mushta and I did with Afghans of Toronto for like blankets, so like
Hmm.
all of those types of projects, I feel like it's all happening. It's all moving together. I really do, after doing the 2T event, it was the first time I've been in like the room with like all of our artists in one place, all of our top artists, and to get to sort of meet everyone and connect and be a part of a community as opposed to just isolated, because for so long I felt like the black sheep, on top of the fact that like there hasn't been any way of bringing everybody together.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a huge thing. I would like to release some more Farsi songs, but I want to find a way to do it in my own like way. I
Hmm.
don't want it to sound like everything else. So that it just takes time to sort of craft and sculpt that, and that would probably be the biggest goal right now, is how can I do that? Not speaking Farsi is like my biggest hurdle with it
Right.
because I'm reliant on somebody else to write the lyrics, but then I don't understand it. So how do I know the quality control? And I'm a perfectionist, so there's like a lot of things that are sort of in the
Yeah,
balance. But
that's
yeah, I would like
wonderful.
to do more of that though.
Yeah, exactly. And hone down that aspect of the Persian and Farsi space, and that's a
Yeah.
huge. You will have a huge audience in that space too, because Persian is spoken by not only people in
So
Afghanistan but
yeah,
also Iran and Tajikistan, and then good following in India. So you'll have a
yeah,
great audience space there.
yeah,
In your journey of as we kind of go towards the end, and in your journey of identity development, identity finding. What are you finding about your own self, and in terms of this dual identity, um, and just being of these two different cultures? What has your journey kind of been of who you are now? How do you feel, uh, in place of, how do you deal with the dual identity? I guess I don't know if I asked the
yeah.
question properly, but if you get
No,
it,
I think I sort
answer.
of get the essence of what you're saying. I think some days it's like easier than others. Like some days it feels very much like two different worlds, you
Yeah.
know?
Uh-huh.
I'm really trying to find my best way of merging the two, because I don't want to feel like I
Hmm.
want to just embody this thing, and internally I feel that way. It's not like for
Hmm.
me it all flows from the same place. But I do
Yeah.
find when I'm around my American friends, if they're less interested in hearing about my Afghan stuff, then I sort of lean a certain direction. I think a
Yeah.
lot of that also comes from being a songwriter, because one minute I'm working on a rock record, next minute I'm on a pop record, next minute I'm on a country album. Like the job really requires you to be a chameleon and be able to kind of shape shift into so many different roles,
Hmm.
which, is cool and exciting. But at the end of the day, then you're like, well, wait, who am I? So
Hmm.
my hope is to find a way to just let everybody around me see that it is all one and the same. And I do think part of like the diaspora and all these young Afghans that I'm connecting with, yourself included, like I've met so many people just through the power of social media, has been really amazing, because it's like we're reclaiming like what belongs to us, which is unity. And so I think through that, I'm actually not as much of a black sheep as I thought. Like there are more Afghans that are open-minded, or that are maybe a little bit, I don't mean to use the word open-minded with being more American. It's just a like mindset, I guess, a
Hmm.
worldliness and an openness. And so like a lot of these events I've been doing these past few months, I've met so many wonderful, beautiful, amazing people that I'm like, oh, this is like my tribe. Like they get me, I get them. We have the same struggles, we have the same victories, like we want the same things. And there's
Hmm.
something really great about that. So I think with all of the sadness that's happened this last year, like I never could have imagined that something great could come from that. And, now I'm starting to see that uh, there has been a lot of beauty born from all of this.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's a beautiful way to conclude the show. You brought
Uh,
us home. You brought us home. That was you brought it all home.
um,
So I thank you very much for being on the show, and wish you all the success, and
thank you.
both in your career and in your service to the community, and connecting,
Thank
and
you.
spiritual and physical growth, life
Thank
growth, and
you.
all aspects of life. So
Thank
thank you,
you so
Megan.
much.
So thank you everyone also for watching. If you like this interview and like to see more, there are a few more conversations on this series, and also there are more coming. So please go ahead and like, subscribe, and watch more. And hope you enjoyed. Thank you again, Megan.
Thank you.